There's no such thing as blasphemy in Buddhism, so I think that's quite interesting. It shows how fluid and live he wanted, the way he wanted people to connect with the teachings. My name is Amra Pushpa, and I'll be talking a bit more tonight on our theme about the Dharma jewel. And with me here to help is my good friend Arya Nisha, who I'll be talking to in a bit. And so this series is called The Three Jewels. So the Three Jewels is quite an important theme in Buddhism. It's quite a central unifying, I suppose, concept, and literally means there's a Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, which would be his teaching, and then the Sangha jewel, which is his community of followers. And we've been following a book by our teacher Sangharakshita on the Three Jewels, and we've done a whole series on the Buddha, and we're probably in week 3 about the Dharma. So I'll say a bit about what we mean by that word Dharma. It has many, many meanings, but for our purposes, it's most used to describe reality or the truth, and also the body of the Buddha's teachings. And so far, we've been looking at what's known as the Dharma from different perspectives. So the first week we were looking at different trends in Buddhism, different approaches to Buddhism. Buddhism's been around for over 2,500 years, and I think there's a profusion of images and styles. There's Zen, there's Tibetan Buddhism, there's a whole range, and how do we get to what the essence of Buddhism is? So we talked about that the first week, and then last week Viryanaga was talking about Buddhist cosmology, and how he, as a physicist, was very inspired by the Buddhist approach to the universe and to space and time, because it's so in sync with what his scientific background connected with. Not all of Buddhism, but certainly that approach to the cosmos. So now we're hitting it at another direction. So tonight we're looking at the Dharma, so the Buddhist teachings as a raft. And I think we'll go back to over 2,500 years ago to the historical Buddha living in northern India. And after he achieved enlightenment, he was very torn, so the legend goes, about, because what he broke through to was so beyond the ordinary mind, beyond the way humanity relates to the world, that he just thought, how can I ever teach this? It just seems an impossible task. How can I communicate to something about something that's beyond the conceptual mind, beyond the way we usually reason? But we celebrated Buddha Day a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things we celebrate is that he did decide to teach out of compassion for human beings. And I just wanted to put it in context. So the Buddha lived in a time of great spiritual ferment. There were a lot of teachers, and there was also, a long spiritual tradition. Some of the scriptures would be the Upanishads, the Vedas. These were roots of Hinduism. And what the Buddha did was he would take currency, terms that were used at the time, in order to effectively communicate to people, but he would give them a new meaning. But for this reason, Buddhism died out in India because Hindus claimed that Buddhism was just an offshoot of Hinduism. But what the Buddha did was gave it a radical angle, yeah. And our teacher says that it's to say Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism is the same as saying that Shakespeare, just because he drew on some Elizabethan poets and dramatists, is an offshoot of those earlier Elizabethans, but he was an absolute genius, as was the Buddha in terms of a teacher and besides being enlightened. But one of the things he drew on that was at the time, I think that's very relevant to anyone who's explored Buddhism. There are a lot of lists and numbers. And one reason for that is that there was a school of philosophy at that time that was very centered around analyzing and counting. So, you know, we have lots of lists in Buddhism. But that's because the Buddha was trying to help us break through our tendency to solidify and make solid our world, and to kind of take the life out of what's dynamic about reality by breaking things down. I'll come back to that in a moment, but so he described whatever he taught. He taught for over 60 years. He was quite a genius at empathy and knowing the right thing, right teaching for the right person. But there was a great body of teaching when he died. But what he said was to treat his teaching like a raft. So Buddhism is a path of transformation. So basically, the Buddha is saying if you want to be free from suffering, and that this was his quest, this is why he made these tremendous efforts to gain enlightenment, then you need to follow a path of transformation, and you need teachings to reflect on. And so he started offering these teachings. And at the time when the Buddha was alive, because these teachings were given by an enlightened being, many people did follow him and gain enlightenment. So there was something about his presence that was much more beyond the teachings. But the teachings have been handed down and inspired people for thousands of years. And but what's quite extraordinary about the Buddha and his teachings, which I think is a bit different from other religions, is that he described them as a raft. So and enlightenment, where we're heading to, so a transcendence of the self to a place that is free from suffering, is one way of describing it. Also a place of unlimited love, compassion, and freedom and wisdom. That you need teaching, so you need this raft to get to what he called the other shore, so that would be enlightenment. So, but once you get there, you don't carry the raft around with you, you leave it behind, because what's on the raft are a lot of words and teachings and concepts and analysis that are helpful to a certain extent. But a real art in terms of us who are Buddhist practitioners is to just discover how much we need without just getting in our heads, because there are so many teachings. And what followed from the Buddha was a lot of recordings of his teachings, but also schools of philosophy that would continue this way of analyzing and breaking things down. So for example, there was what's known as the Abhidharma, so Buddhist psychology, where they really broke down every mental state. So you had, and yes, it can be very helpful. But how do we find a middle way into taking in a certain amount of teachings that could help us transform, but not holding on to the teachings as ends in themselves? And I think one other extraordinary thing about Buddhism, besides the Buddha saying, use them, but don't solidify around them, is that there's no such thing as blasphemy in Buddhism. So I think that's quite interesting. It shows how fluid and live he wanted, the way he wanted people to connect with the teachings. So I think one approach is to what's known as the 3 levels of wisdom in terms of approaching any teachings in Buddhism. And I think they're very beautiful. So the first level is you hear a teaching, but you really hear it, you really listen, and hearing includes reading. So you might read about Buddhism and you take that in. But in order for it to seep into more of our being, the next level is we reflect on it. So, and reflection can be done together with other people, discussing, or like a silent reflection. So it's a combination of words and meditation. And then the last level is meditation, where you're really meditating. So almost dropping those words in, but getting to a place beyond words. And this is why meditation has such an important place in Buddhism, is because meditation, we need to experience. The Buddha would often say, don't take my word for it. Reflect on it, meditate on it, and see if it feels true to you, for yourself. And our approach to Buddhism in Triratna, so our tradition is actually known, Triratna literally means 3 jewels. And Arya Nisha and I are wearing the 3 jewels. And what these are, these represent our commitment to practicing in these 3 jewels. And our teacher's approach is, he was an English monk originally who trained in India, but he also did a vast study of Buddhism. And he formulated an approach which is to get to basic Buddhism. So what are the basic teachings that are most in common through all schools of Buddhism? And his approach is we need more and more of less and less. So how do we stay with a few teachings and go more deeply into the essence? What helps us transform? And I've very much appreciated this approach over the years. I went to Bodh Gaya in India a couple of years ago, where the Buddha was enlightened, and there were Buddhists from many, many different traditions, including Thai, Tibetan, all sorts of, and there were so many basic things that I could see was universal through all these approaches. And I guess just to give an example I'll give 1 or 2 examples of basic Buddhist teachings that can be very helpful. So one of them is known as the 5 skandhas. In this teaching, the Buddha is giving us ways to analyze our human existence. And in doing that, so rather than feeling like we're this complete separate being, disconnected from what's around us and other people, it's and the sense of relating to the world of me and mine. He breaks down the human existence into, first of all, the body, the form, and what comes in through the senses. And then the next category is feeling, so pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Then the next level is perception, so how do we perceive this contact through the senses? And then the fourth is we build up habits in response to what we find, in response to what we want and what we don't want. So, and that relates to our actions in the world. And that's a whole other area that maybe we'll get into further on into that series. And then there's consciousness, so there's an awareness of all those things. So if you sit with it's just an example. If you sit with, what is my human existence? I have form, things come in through my senses, I have perception, and thoughts start coming in, and I have habits. Some of them are helpful and some aren't so helpful. So it can be a very freeing way to stop getting, I suppose as human beings, often we can't see the woods for the trees. We're kind of locked into habitual ways of doing things and the way the world relates to each other. We have a lot of conditioning through society, etc. And so this kind of analysis is just one example. I'll just mention the most basic one, but very, very profound and significant, and that's the Four Noble Truths. It's the Buddha's first teaching. And he starts out with the unsatisfactoriness of relating to the world being us and everything around us being subject to everything being in change and impermanent and non-fixed, and then the cause of it being craving, pulling things towards us and pushing away. And then it's a formula of a medical prescription. So the illness is suffering, the cause is craving. There's a cure, that's the third truth. And then there's a prescription, and that's his teaching on how we transform body, speech, and mind. So this is kind of a whistle-stop tour. I'll stop here, but again, these, you could just take one teaching. I've been reflecting on this for 25 years, and I keep seeing something new. So I reflect on it, bring it into meditation, talk about it with other friends in the community, and you just see, I have found it a very, very liberating teaching. And as the Buddha says, don't hold on to the raft, use it, don't throw it away too soon, but see for yourself if it conduces to more liberation, more positive states of mind. Then you've got the right slats on the raft, and you carry on. Yeah. So in a moment I'll turn on to Aryanisha.
Yeah, great. Oh, thank you so much, Amma Pushpa. It's good to get a bit of an overview and some of the context as well for those teachings. I was wondering, going back to the three levels of wisdom, if there was anything in particular, any sort of approaches that you find yourself personally drawn to, because I imagine we're all quite different in the way that we practice, aren't we? And there's things that we try out. But is there anything that you're feeling particularly, sort of any approaches that you're feeling particularly inspired by at the moment?
Well, I've always loved meditation, but when I came across reflection, as a conscious activity, that was really liberating, because I just think, up until then, I think, in our movement, it was kind of overlooked. Like we studied the teachings, and then we meditated a lot. But this middle area of reflection that kind of joins, learning and then meditating. So I just really love it. I do quite a bit of walking meditation, so sometimes I reflect with that. And related to meditation is I bring the body in quite a bit with reflection. So I might say a phrase or something of a teaching, and then just see what response I have in my body to it. So that's a way of reflecting I like. How about you?
Oh, yeah, no, good question. I think I'm quite extroverted, so I tend to really get on well with reflecting, like with maybe like another good friend. And I kind of sort of like the energy that that you sort of get with that. There's something seems to sort of come out that you might not have got to on your own. So I do like doing that. I have started doing. I've had on and off periods of doing a bit more writing. Like for example, doing like a gratitude practice, that sort of thing. That's been, I found that really helpful. And then, I think I must admit I've sort of struggled with my own sort of meditation practice over the years. If I'm off on retreat, then I could really sort of get into it, and I could really feel that I could kind of reflect and meditate and all sort of go in that way. But when I was at home, I used to find that really difficult. So I'd be doing more with friends. But I think, certainly since like my ordination retreat, that seems to be much easier to do that now. And I certainly learnt some kind of approaches on that retreat that I feel a lot more drawn to. So I feel a bit more settled that I can do kind of a bit more sort of meditation as well, which is a relief. Because as someone who's like had on and off struggle to keep up a regular meditation practice, it's really nice now to feel like, yes, I want to do it every day. That's good. Great. Yeah,
I'd forgotten about writing as a reflection too. So, often, sometimes speed writing too. So you get past your mind's censor. And see what that's a type of reflection. So it's kind of getting us out of the head. I think Buddhism is a really, brings together reason and emotion and faith, it's quite important. Reason is important. We don't, thinking isn't bad. We do need our thoughts. We need to use our minds to reflect. But if that's all we do, then things solidify, and that's why there have been so many different movements in Buddhism. I think it happens with other religions as things get too solid, and then other people come along and they react to it, and a new school of Buddhism arises. And how are you with all the numbers and lists in Buddhism?
Oh yeah, no, they used to really stress me out actually. That was one of the things that, one of the reasons I had given myself that I wasn't sure that I could ask for ordination, because I felt like I didn't know enough lists. And there's a booklet you can buy called The Garland of Terms. Someone had come up with it, and I think I bought it because I thought I should know more. I think I had sort of flashbacks to being at school, and I thought, I'll buy this book. And I think I looked at it probably about twice. So it's not, it's maybe not my kind of immediate way in, but actually if I do think about even in my sort of day-to-day practice and how I interact with people, I think particularly coming back to thing around sensations and pleasant, unpleasant, neutral sensation, that feels like it's quite strongly woven in. If I'm getting
like an
tight,
analysis.
Yes, just to sort of notice in the body of like, oh, okay, I'm tense now. That's unpleasant. To get away from the kind of heady stories I've got about whatever's going on at work or whatever. So I think. Looking at this chapter, I thought, I'm not. Initially, I thought I'm not one of those people who does the list, but actually, I think it is in there. Without me even maybe sort of realising it quite so much. Yeah.
I mean, I find some analysis really helpful. It gets me away from my emotional kind of fog. But it was very interesting how these list makings almost becomes a hobby. It almost becomes it has become obsessional at times in history. And when our teacher came back from being in India for 15 years and came back to England, it was the 1960s. Buddhism was really more like an academic hobby, it was just an academic, it was much more of an academic exercise. And he put a lot of thought into how to make it live again, for how not to lose the teachings, but also make it a living practice.
I think when I first came along to Buddhism, it was only a few months after I graduated, and the order member, I was on a retreat in Scotland, and the order member who was running it at the end of the retreat, I said, what should I read? Because I've got everything, I've had everything through like sort of intense study. And he was like, go and read some poetry and go and meditate a bit. And he was completely right. That's what I needed to do. So for me, it was getting the emotions kind of on board was really important, particularly at that stage too. But I do also really appreciate I think coming from that sort of background where academically, where you were really encouraged to inquire and like really learn how to kind of think for yourself. What do you think? And I really appreciated that actually with our tradition actually, that there was this real emphasis on like your own reflecting on your own experience. Does this feel kind of true, and not just sort of accepting something blindly because that's what you've been told. Felt like it had a lot of integrity in it and I could trust it. So that's been very important.
Investigating.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, and in the Buddha's day, people would travel miles and miles on foot for teaching, and it was all oral for a couple of hundred years. People just memorized it, and he would just give them one or two teachings, and they would go away and just practice that. So it's amazing what's evolved from that. But we're a wordy human beings, aren't we? Yeah. But and this whole thing about needing words to be free of words, because ultimately, we're kind of trying to get beyond it, but we need those as this raft.
Do you want to finish there? Or
do you
want to,
you can finish there, unless you had a burning something.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that Dharma Night talk. So if you did enjoy it, if you're enjoying our videos, I just want to ask you or encourage you to think about making a donation to the Brixton Buddhist community. We're a UK charity that relies completely on your donations to run everything here. And if this was a meditation class, there'd be a donation bowl that you could just put in £10 at the end of the night to help support the activities. But as you're watching this online, I just want to ask you to think about making an online donation. If you've watched 4 or 5 videos this month, maybe you might want to think about giving £10. So there's a link in the description below where you can go to our website and make a donation. And if you want to keep giving and you don't want to worry about making that donation every month, well, you could just set up a standing order, a monthly standing order. That would be really, really helpful. I want to suggest something of the region of maybe £10 or £20 a month if you're able to do that. And that would be really, really helpful and help us keep producing videos like this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself.